Welcome to the Neurotech Network Real Stories, Real People series. Spinal cord stimulation has been used for decades to treat chronic pain, and TENS units have been used for acute pain. Then there is a class of neuromuscular electrical stimulators that contract muscles for reconditioning and spasms. But research and development have given birth to a new class of these devices, transcutaneous spinal cord stimulation. This is not like a reconfiguration of the aforementioned devices. This is an emerging, non-invasive stimulation modality, and when coupled with physical rehabilitation, it can have profound impact. For Dan, who encountered a cervical level spinal cord injury, he found himself, quote, all of a sudden dependent on others for everything. He is one of the early pioneers of this technology, and well, let him tell you what impact it's had on his life.
So, Dan, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come tell us your story, hear from you and your experiences. But let's start off with you. Who are you? What do you do for a living?
Okay,
Where do you
okay.
live? What do you like to do in your pastime?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I appreciate it. I live in East Hampton, Massachusetts, which is the western part of Mass. I own and still own and manage a land surveying company. It's currently got a staff of about 10 people. It was running prior to my accident, and due to my staff, I've been able to keep it going until I was able to get back into the operation of the business itself, which has been a blessing for me. Prior to the accident, I've always been an athlete. I've done the Ironman. I compete. I'm a master's competitor in cycling, road swimming, you name it, I did it. I had a lot of fun with all of that. And unfortunately, I found a pothole one day in May of 2017, and that abruptly changed everything. And from there, I've ended up finding myself running around on four wheels or six wheels occasionally, and trying to figure my life back out.
So tell me about the accident. It was a traumatic accident. You were out cycling, you hit a
Yeah,
pothole. What
yeah,
happened?
it sucked. It
Yeah.
sucked. As everybody who gets hurt with these kind of cervical injuries or any spinal cord injury, you just know it stinks. I was out with a friend, early spring training rides. We don't go hard. We just sort of putter along and just try to get the time in. And I think we were about 3 hours into a ride. I knew the pothole was there because we'd seen it a million times going on the same route. And I happened to know that there was a minivan behind me to my left. And although I was on the proper side of the white line, meaning the right hand side of it, I still you always pay attention. You don't know when you're going to get clipped by a car. And unfortunately, I had twisted my head back and drifted to the right just enough to sink the front wheel into about a 6-inch hole. The next thing I knew was I was on my back, and I was cognizant enough to realize I couldn't move. And I told my friend Scott, who was with me at the time, I can't move, call my wife. I gave the phone number.
What is your actual diagnosis in terms of,
I'm,
because with spinal cord injury, it's a level and a
I'm a C4, C6, essentially. It runs bits and pieces all the way down through there. I'm what they call the central cord, meaning apparently I'm not sure, but the outside of the cord got less damage than the inside, meaning my legs function to an extent. But my arms, my hands, and everything else that we all get with this package, minimal function or limited function.
so with a cervical level injury, a central cord injury, incomplete. I mean, what was the biggest impact on you after you were in?
I the fact that, and I think it hits everybody, but I think it hits cervical people the most, is the fact you are all of a sudden dependent upon others for everything. And it's hard. excruciatingly difficult and painful, to go from somebody who can do all the little things that everybody who is able-bodied can do, and stuff that some of the paras can do, meaning, from brushing your teeth to scratching an itch on your head to lying in bed, and basically the only thing you can do is move your head a little bit and click something. And it it just it's devastating, emotionally and physically. I did not take up the challenge of rehabilitation for a little bit, because I just was in shock that, man, I'm down. What do we do? The doctors are what doctors are, and they're cautious, and they give you, they gave me, and I found that this happens a lot. They give you very cautious prognosis, and they try to limit your, um, hope, because they don't want you to go running around with a false idea of where you're going to end up.
So what, you said you delayed your rehab. I mean, how
Mentally,
long was it delayed? And then when
it
did
was
it really
only
start?
delayed. It was only delayed a few weeks, but it was just an emotional. It was the emotional ride. I just went down, boom, and I was like, you know, at one point it was pull the plug. At one point it was, I just don't want to be here. This is not my existence. It's never been my existence. Like a lot of folks that get hurt. Um, your existence is outside. You're doing things. You're an active person, and by no fault of your own, um, somebody out there says, nope, we're going to reset the board here and you're going to start over.
Mm.
And I think it was starting to deal with that caused, it was just a few weeks, but it was enough time for me to back off a little bit and say, do I want to try to fight this? Am I going to try to fight this? Or am I just going to run up the white flag now and say, hey, I've had a great run, let's shut it down? Um, I didn't, and so here we sit today.
So what sparked you? And you ended up joining a clinical trial for transcutaneous spinal cord stimulation. It's a trial. It's it's it at the time, but how in the world did you decide to make a leap from doing the exercises and the work that you do at home, and when rehab ends, to deciding to go into a clinical trial?
A lot of research on my end on the internet, reading around, seeing what's what, seeing who's doing what to whom. Um, and then basically figuring, and this is going to sound, to some people, this may sound weird, but it was like, how much worse could it get? So it was like, WTF, I'm going to do anything and everything in my power to get as functional as I can, or I don't go into situations without having done at least some research. I mean, the transcutaneous stuff is patches on the back. You're really in control of you, depending upon which version of the study you were working with, are in control of what you're doing to yourself. And you have the ability to shut things down if it gets uncomfortable, we'll put it that way.
So when you entered into the clinical trial, tell us about, like, what were you able to do now that you started to use this transcutaneous, spinal cord stimulation device?
It loosened me up a little bit more. I felt the spasticity starting to reduce. So I had more movement. I was not quite as stiff. Um, I noticed that gradually the hands would open up a little bit more under stimulation. I could pick things up with a little bit more ease. I could reach a little bit easier. It made movements that my brain wanted to do, but my body sort of did. But in my situation, it's stiffness. I just couldn't do or quite do what I wanted to do, and all of a sudden, little things started to happen. And the thing that I want to emphasize here is not just during the treatment. The whole idea of neuroplasticity, at least for me, is real, because I have found that even following the treatment, I was continuing, and maybe it's because of my exercise regime, but I was continuing to see gradual, what I perceived as gradual improvements. And I think as they say, the old adage, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Maybe an able-bodied person couldn't see the improvement, but I think anybody who is broken knows what they can and cannot do.
So
So
give us a perspective of what they had you do in the trial. So it was in clinic.
it was in
Um,
clinic. Yes, they
mhm.
would hook you up. They had a series of exercises, about 15 minutes of each. It started with a little bit of a cardio that I still do today, which was basically swinging your arms around, out, punching across, punching along the back, or moving as best you could with those punches. Um, that lasted for a bit, and then we would work on. They would adjust the programming a little bit, and you'd work on possibly figure hand manipulation, you're picking up the blocks and you're moving blocks, or you're trying to pick up coins, or you're trying to flip a page in a book, or even hold a pencil. Little things like that that people take for granted. Um, there was some writing. We worked on writing a little bit. So again, getting a feel, moving your wrist, moving your arm if you could. Um, and there was a little bit of home care, or trying to either feed yourself, or how to cut, use a knife, or things along those lines, just to give you a little bit of idea that you could do certain things. And I can only imagine what more you could do with it if you had it for a longer period of time. The first study, which was in the clinic, was 3 days a week for 8 weeks, and that was way too short. And then I was fortunate enough to get called in, and they asked me if I would use it as a take-home version for another 5 weeks, with a limit of 300 minutes a week and a minimum of 120. And that's where I found things were really changing for the better. And I was very disappointed to have to send it home. But anyhow, that's a clinic study.
So Dan, tell me how what you experienced in the trial and in using the device, how did it translate into your everyday routine, or, things that you do in your everyday life?
I found that I could open my hands more, so I could grab I can't completely grab it, but my hand is not a clutched fist of iron, and I can, manipulate and move around. Say, for example, an iPad. I can move around and manipulate a cup of coffee. I can't put it to my face, but at least I can drag it to me. I can handle a remote control. I have better ability to type, the ability to reach, the ability to even keep one index finger on my left hand down enough to just type with it makes a huge difference. So little things like that. Nothing that one would say is earth shattering.
So was there something in using the device or when you were in the clinical trial that you were not expecting?
I wasn't expecting quite the ramp up's a little bit, it can be a little bit of a surprise in that how it feels. For me, it felt like somebody was just ticking my neck with a little bit of a needle, just real quick. And I didn't anticipate that. But on the other hand, you're there, you're giving it a shot. You figure that, hey, people have at least tried this a little bit. Hasn't killed anybody yet, so we're just going to give it a go and see what happens. That was the biggest thing, though, was the ampage, and when they turned it up, how it felt through the body, and when they were able to turn it down, how it felt, and realizing that you don't need to feel it all the time to have the benefits and the gains that it allows you to have.
So as I'm sure you know, in the spinal cord injury world, spinal cord stimulation, whether it's transcutaneous or epidural, it really has a buzz that's
Mhm.
going around in the spinal cord injury world. But for somebody that has been in a trial and who's tried the device, what advice do you give to people that are living with spinal cord injury that might be potential users that
It's hope. It's hope.
they
Try it. You can't go wrong. The only thing that can go bad is it doesn't work for you. You won't feel anything. That's, as far as I'm concerned, give it a shot. You could be really surprised. The other thing you need to do is be patient. This isn't going to, though your body broke all at once, it doesn't come back all at once. It comes back very slowly with a whole lot of work. So you got to be patient, and you've got to be persistent. But if you have the opportunity to A, either get into a trial, or B, get into a clinic right now that has one of these devices available, I would recommend it without a second thought. It's a no-brainer if you're lucky enough to be able to get into it to try it.
So I have to ask you this. You run your own business. You've been involved in clinical trials. How in the world do you make it work? I mean, it's a lot just being running a business yourself, but then fitting in being a quad and then being involved in all these trials. How do you do it?
How do you do it? A lot of drive. You got to love what you do for the business. My business, the joke for my business and me is it's kept me sane, and it's kept me alive. I would, on a week, I would much rather be studying. And what I do is I tend to work the CAD side of things, and research now. So I'll be reading deeds and doing studying deeds and or writing proposals. And it's a means of an outlet that keeps me feeling like I'm human, not human, but more able-bodied. I lose myself in my work, and I feel like, okay,
Mm.
the playing field's a little stable. I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted every night. There's no problem sleeping. I am just toast. It's hard. Yeah, I'm not going to say it isn't, and I don't think anybody who is a quad needs to be told that it is probably one of the most difficult diagnosis that you could run into. It is just brutal, but you have a choice. And each individual has to make their own choice, how they're going to respond to it, and how they're going to, whether they're going to move forward or whether they're not.
Great. Well, Dan, thank you so much for telling your story and your experience. This has been such a learning episode. So appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.